Ceann Comhairle, I'm pleased to have an opportunity to speak on this issue. And I think it's fair to say that there's been a lot of misunderstanding and misinformation. And the reality is that of all the people who come into the country, people seeking international protection are actually a very small number. For example, we give 39,000, between 30 and 39,000, depending on the year, work permits to people from outside the EU. And of course, if they didn't come in and do the necessary work they're doing, the economy and services in this country wouldn't function. As well as that, of course, because we're in the European Union, there is free travel here from anybody who is legally resident in the European Union. So we have a system that is open but subject to checks. Now, in relation to people coming here seeking international protection, I think it's fair to say that there are checks carried out when they come here. In fact, unlike the other groups that I've mentioned, particularly people coming from within the EU, there are no checks, or people coming from Ukraine, my understanding is there was no checks. But people coming in seeking international protection, there are checks, there are records. I understand that there are, for example, fingerprints, that these are shared with Eurodac. So it's slightly disingenuous not to say that. The second point that I think we have to get on the record, that people coming here looking for refugee status, or even economic migrants coming here, and of course they're not eligible for status, we'll come to that in a minute. The reality is the thing they want is citizenship. And to achieve citizenship could take you 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years. And the reality is that if there's any infraction of the law of any consequence, that disqualifies you from ever or from making an application for citizenship. And therefore, people who come in here tend to be very careful. Now, I have very little time. I think it's 4 minutes, is that correct? Yes. And I would just like to say that we have pressure on our hospitals, we have pressure on our housing, and we should deal with those and deal with them urgently. And like most TDs, I spend a considerable part of my time pressing these matters, as I do believe that they are hugely important. However, I cannot stand here and say that it's acceptable that people are being forced, whether they're native to this country or they came in the last week, that they're being forced to sleep on the streets of this country, that they're not entitled to a roof over their head. And some people think, well, they're only men. I can guarantee you as a man that men feel the cold too. And that, you know, I just shudder at the thought of having to sleep out in weather like we're getting at the moment, because it's either raining or windy or it's freezing cold. So what I would say is we do need a debate. There are certain aspects of the system that I have to say are very frustrating. I was delighted to hear the Minister say yesterday that they were going to speed up the system, because the system traditionally has been very slow. Another issue that I find frustrating is I cannot get answers. I get people coming to me, particularly in relation to accommodation for Ukrainians, saying that they have spare capacity. They have spare capacity. When I ask parliamentary questions, they're referred on, and I do not get the information required. And I get very, very vague answers as to what is the occupancy rate at this time. And I certainly know of at least one place that is constantly complaining that they have empty beds. I've heard no complaint about the place. And I'm wondering how this could be when we hear all the time that there's a shortage of accommodation.